Hello, and welcome to FTx Academy. My name is Michael, and I will be walking you through setting up and understanding the retail scan data reports, as well as the specific settings for those reports and their respective manufacturers. Currently, we offer support for 3 manufacturers: RJR, PM, and ITG. We will be covering the nuances of setting up scan data submissions for each of these manufacturers. Let's get to it. To navigate to the scan data setup page from the dashboard, on the left side, you'll click Point of Sale, Reports, and then navigate till you see Scan Data. On the Scan Data page, this is where you find a list of all of your different manufacturer retail scan data reports. At the top, we have our report type. Clicking this shows us a drop-down of all the different manufacturers that we're able to set up our scan data for. We have RJ Reynolds, Philip Morris, and ITG. Selecting the appropriate manufacturer gives us the setup page to automatically send our scan data, or manually, whichever we decide to do. For this example, we're going to set up the PM/UST retail scan data. We'll select that from the drop-down, and then beneath that, we have our notification list. This allows us to type an email or multiple emails to receive a notification when this report is generated and submitted. Now we're going to go into the actual submission setup. Your scan data representative should supply you with an FTP connection as well as a username and password to log in to submit your file. So under the FTP connection, we have a few different options. We have single FTP/SFTP setup. If you set this to no, then this allows you to set up your scan data submissions individually for each location. However, we do recommend submitting as a whole. So we'll select single FTP/SFTP setup. After we check that to yes, we have underneath that, enable autosend. Checking this to yes allows us to set up a time that this report is automatically generated and submitted. This makes your submissions so much easier. So after we set this to yes, we have a drop-down for what day we want to submit this on. For this example, we'll select Monday. And then on the right side of that, we have the time that we would like this report to generate and start sending. So clicking this gives us the pop-up here. For this example, we're going to keep it at 12 a.m. However, you can set it to any time that you would like it to run. After we select the auto send date and time, underneath that we have our method. You should be able to reference the information provided to you by your representative to determine the method in which you are submitting to. Clicking this dropdown gives us FTP, SFTP, or FTP active. Most of the time, you want to select SFTP, but once again, this is where you should reference the information provided to you by your representative. For the example, we're going to use SFTP. Next, we have port. This should reflect the port number provided to you by your representative. Underneath that, we have the FTP site, username, and password. Once again, reference the information provided to you and type that information into these fields here. After you type that information in, if you have a specific folder that you need to submit to, we have the folder field, which is where you type that folder in. Typically, you'll do a / and then the folder name. After this information is set, on the top right, we have our Save button. This allows us to save all of this information into these fields for this scan data submission setup. Of course, after you type that information in, you may want to test. We do have a Test FTP/SFTP connection button. This is to ensure that the control center is able to make a secure connection to that site. Once again, all of this information is supplied to you by your representative. If you need help typing this information in, please reach out to support. For the Philip Morris scan data, we have a few additional options here on the right side, under Report Options. Under Report Options, you can see we have two tabs, Settings and Loyalty Codes. We're going to show you the Loyalty Codes tab first. Under Loyalty Codes, you can see we have two bubbles, Single Code and Location-Based Code. Depending on your options, and depending on how you're submitting your scan data, you will select the appropriate option. If it's single code, then you just type in the loyalty codes provided to you by your representative into the appropriate fields. So we have the loyalty UPC, the club UPC. If you have a UPC for both of those, you'll type that in here, or just the single UPC. And this is for the Philip Morris loyalty. Scrolling down a little bit further, we have our Skoll loyalty UPC, our Copenhagen loyalty UPC, our On loyalty UPC, and of course, our L&M loyalty UPC. Your representative should supply you with all of the codes necessary for these fields if you participate in promotions for those brands. Clicking the location-based code shows us this Manage Locations hyperlink. When you click this gives you a list of all of the locations that you have set up within the control center alongside the loyalty UPC, club UPC, and both UPCs. So if you have specific stores that have different codes, this is how you manage that. For example, here at the top, our Madison store, if we have a code for the Madison store that's different than, say, Carly's store, we will just type in the appropriate codes for those locations. After that, you click your close button, and then you have your loyalty codes in there. This is important for if you submit loyalty-based scan data submissions. When setting up your loyalty discount, there is a field to already include that appropriate loyalty UPC. However, if you submit for your different locations, this is where you go to enter that information externally. We do recommend that you put your loyalty UPCs on your discounts. After we've saved the setup, we also have our store filters. Clicking that gives us a pop-up of all of our locations. This is so that we are able to select specific stores in which to generate a scan data file for and submit it. If we have nothing selected in the selected list on the right side, the system automatically defaults to all stores. So if you don't have anything selected, when you generate your file, it will generate the data from all of the locations. Since we want to submit for all of our locations, we're going to leave that selected list empty. We'll click Close. Next to that button, we have View Run History. Clicking this gives us a pop-up that shows us information on how often this report has been ran and by whom. This is helpful for if we need to find out whether or not the submission has been submitted for this week or not. Closing that, lastly, we have Generate Files. Clicking this button gives us a pop-up to actually start generating the file. We have a start date and a stop date. This is where you input the time period in which you want to gather data for to submit it. After you select your time period, on the bottom right side of this pop-up, we have a Close button. We also have the Download File button, and then we have Send. If we do not want to submit this file, but rather we want to review it, we can click the Download File button. If we are ready to submit and we have our FTP information inputted, then we can click the Send button. And what that will do is begin generating all of the data for the time period in which we've selected, as well as the locations that we have selected, and submitting it to the FTP site based on the information you inputted into the FTP connection side. And that's how you set up and generate your retail scan data report for Philip Morris.